You have 30 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't buy this entire company just to fire you." The words hung in the air of the marble-floored boardroom, and I watched my ex-husband's face drain of all color. Darren Matthews stood frozen behind his mahogany desk, his mouth opening and closing like he'd forgotten how to breathe. The same man who'd called me worthless 3 months ago was now staring at me like I'd risen from the dead. But I suppose, in a way, I had. You know, there's something beautiful about karma. Not the gentle kind that takes years to unfold, but the swift, devastating kind that arrives exactly when someone thinks they've gotten away with everything. The kind that doesn't just balance the scales, it shatters them completely. I've learned that sometimes the universe waits for the perfect moment to reveal just how spectacularly wrong someone can be about everything they thought they knew. Hey everyone, I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you're watching from. Whether you're dealing with sunshine or storm clouds outside, I promise this story will give you something to think about. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button if you believe in justice, and subscribe because trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. My name is Liana Brooks, and this is the story of how I went from being called a financial burden by my own husband to watching him beg for mercy in a boardroom I now owned. This is about the moment I walked into his wedding venue, not as the broken woman he'd discarded, but as the billionaire CEO he never knew he'd married. But let me start from the beginning, because the best revenge stories always do. I was 24 when I met Darren, working double shifts at a downtown diner while putting myself through nursing school. I believed in love that conquered everything, in partnerships that weathered any storm, in the kind of marriage where two people built something beautiful together from nothing. I thought money didn't matter as long as you had each other. I thought a good man would stand by you when life got hard, not run toward the first person who promised him an easier path. I was so beautifully, devastatingly wrong about everything. See, what Darren never knew, what nobody knew, was that I wasn't actually poor. I wasn't struggling because I had to be. I was struggling because I'd chosen to be, because I'd walked away from a fortune so vast it could have solved every problem we ever faced. I'd given up billions to live authentically, to find someone who would love me for who I was, not what I could give them. The irony is almost poetic, isn't it? I'd spent 5 years hiding my true identity to test if love could exist without money, only to discover that the man I'd chosen would abandon me the moment he thought I couldn't provide enough of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how deep this betrayal went, how completely Darren destroyed not just our marriage, but our family. You need to know about our daughter Martha, about the hospital bills that broke his spirit, about the boss who seduced him with promises of wealth and status. You need to understand exactly what kind of man chooses his career over his dying child. Because when you understand all of that, you'll appreciate what happened next so much more. The day I walked into that boardroom wasn't just about confronting my ex-husband. It was about showing him, and everyone who'd watched him abandon us, exactly what he'd thrown away. It was about proving that sometimes the quiet woman you underestimate is actually the most powerful person in the room. And trust me, the look on his face when he realized who I really was, that was worth every moment of pain he'd put me through. So settle in, because this story has everything: betrayal that cuts to the bone, a child fighting for her life, a man who sold his soul for a promotion, and a woman who rose from the ashes of her broken marriage to reclaim an empire. This is about what happens when someone mistakes your kindness for weakness, your humility for poverty, and your love for desperation. This is about the day Darren Matthews learned that the woman he'd called worthless was actually worth more than everything he'd ever dreamed of having. And the best part? He learned it in front of everyone who mattered. I was 24 and working at Mel's Diner on 5th Street when Darren first walked in, looking like he'd been running through the rain. His tie was crooked, his hair was a mess, and he had this expression of someone whose day had gone completely sideways. He ordered coffee and sat in the corner booth, staring at his phone like it held the answers to every problem in his life. I'd been raised to notice people who were struggling. My grandmother always said that kindness was the most valuable currency in the world, and I'd built my entire identity around that belief. So when I saw this man who looked like he was carrying the weight of the world, I did what felt natural. I brought him an extra piece of pie and asked if he was okay. That simple act of kindness changed everything. Darren looked up at me with these warm brown eyes and smiled for the first time since he'd walked in. He told me about his job interview that had gone terribly, about the student loans crushing him, about feeling like he was drowning in a city that didn't care if he succeeded or failed. I listened, refilled his coffee, and somehow we ended up talking until my shift ended. He was studying business management, working part-time at a small marketing firm, and dreaming of the day he could afford more than ramen noodles for dinner. I was in nursing school, living in a tiny studio apartment and perfectly content with my simple life. We were both broke, both ambitious, both convinced that love and hard work could overcome anything. What I couldn't tell him, was that I had a trust fund worth more than most people see in 10 lifetimes. That my last name wasn't really Brooks, but something that would have made him treat me completely differently. That I was living paycheck to paycheck by choice, not necessity. I'd grown up watching my grandmother build an empire, seeing how money changed people, how it made them perform instead of just being themselves. I'd seen too many relationships destroyed by wealth, too many people who loved the fortune instead of the person. So when I turned 18, I'd made a decision that horrified my family. I walked away from it all. I wanted to know what real love felt like. I wanted someone to choose me for my heart, my mind, my soul, not my bank account. I wanted to build something authentic with someone who saw value in who I was, not what I could provide. Darren seemed like the answer to everything I'd been hoping for. Our courtship was beautiful in its simplicity. We'd meet after my shifts and walk through the city, talking about our dreams and fears. He'd bring me flowers he'd picked from the park because he couldn't afford to buy them. I'd cook dinner in my tiny kitchen, and we'd eat by candlelight because it felt romantic, not because we couldn't afford electricity. He talked about the family he wanted to build, the home we'd create together, the way we'd support each other through everything life threw at us. He said he didn't need much to be happy, just someone who believed in him, someone who'd stand by his side no matter what. I believed every word. When he proposed after 2 years together, it was with a ring he'd saved for months to buy. Nothing fancy, just a simple band with a small diamond that caught the light when I moved my hand. He got down on one knee in the same diner where we'd met and promised me a lifetime of love, partnership, and unwavering loyalty. "I don't have much to offer you right now," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "But I promise you'll never doubt how much you mean to me. We'll build something beautiful together, Liana. Just you and me against the world." I said yes because I believed him. I said yes because I thought I'd found someone who would love me through anything. I said yes because I was young and hopeful and convinced that choosing love over money was the most romantic thing in the world. Our wedding was small and perfect. We couldn't afford a big celebration, so we had the ceremony in a little church with just a few friends and my chosen family, the people who'd supported my decision to live independently. Darren's parents flew in from Ohio, proud of their son for finding such a sweet, hard-working girl. If only they'd known their sweet, hard-working daughter-in-law could have bought their entire hometown without checking her bank balance. But I was happy living the life I'd chosen. We moved into a one-bedroom apartment, split the bills down the middle, and built our little world together. Darren got promoted to account manager. I graduated nursing school and started working at the Children's Hospital, and for 3 years, everything felt perfect. Then Martha came along, and our simple life became something magical. She was born on a Tuesday morning in October, tiny and perfect, and absolutely everything we'd dreamed of. Darren cried when he held her for the first time, promising her the world even though we could barely afford the hospital bill. I watched him become a father and fell in love with him all over again. She's going to have everything we didn't, he whispered, stroking her tiny hand. I'm going to work so hard, Liana. I'm going to make sure she never wants for anything. I should have told him then. Should have explained that Martha would never want for anything because her mother could provide everything she'd ever need. But I was still holding on to my dream of authentic love, still believing that we were building something real together. Martha was the light of our lives. She was curious and bright, always asking questions, always exploring. She'd inherited Darren's warm eyes and my stubborn streak, and watching her grow was the greatest joy either of us had ever experienced. But when Martha turned 4, everything changed. It started with fatigue. She'd come home from preschool and fall asleep on the couch, too tired to play with her toys. Then came the bruises that appeared without explanation, the fevers that wouldn't break, the way she'd lost her appetite for all her favorite foods. The pediatrician ran tests. More tests. Then more tests. The day we got the diagnosis, I watched my husband's world shatter completely. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Aggressive. Requiring immediate treatment and a bone marrow transplant that our insurance would only partially cover. The estimated cost for Martha's treatment was close to $500,000. Darren stared at the doctor like he was speaking a foreign language. I watched the color drain from his face as the numbers sank in, watched him calculate and recalculate in his head, watched him realize that everything we'd built together wasn't enough to save our daughter. There has to be something, he said, his voice breaking. Payment plans, charity programs, something. We can't just let her. He couldn't even finish the sentence. That night, after Martha had fallen asleep between us in our bed, Darren held me while we both cried. He made promises about second jobs, about selling everything we owned, about finding a way to make it work. I won't let anything happen to her, he whispered into my hair. I don't care what I have to do. I'll find the money somehow. I could have ended his suffering right then. Could have made one phone call and had the best medical team in the world treating our daughter by morning. Could have revealed that money would never be an issue for us, that Martha would receive every possible treatment without us worrying about a single bill. But I hesitated. I was still clinging to the life we'd built, still hoping we could face this challenge together without my family's wealth changing everything between us. That hesitation cost me everything. Because while I was trying to figure out how to help without destroying our marriage, Darren was making his own plans. Plans that didn't include me. Plans that would shatter our family in ways I never saw coming. The first sign something was wrong came 3 weeks after Martha's diagnosis, when Darren started working late every single night. I understood the pressure he was under. The medical bills were already piling up, and Martha's treatment hadn't even officially started yet. The insurance company was fighting us on coverage, the hospital wanted payment plans we couldn't afford, and every day felt like we were drowning a little deeper. But Darren had always been the type to come home and talk through problems with me. We'd sit at our little kitchen table after Martha went to bed, spreading out bills and bank statements, figuring out solutions together. That's how we'd always handled everything as a team. Now he'd come home after 10, exhausted and distant, claiming his boss was demanding overtime from everyone. He'd kiss Martha goodnight if she was still awake, grab a beer from the fridge, and disappear into our bedroom to make phone calls I wasn't invited to hear. Just work stuff, he'd say when I asked. Trying to secure some new accounts. The commission could really help us right now. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. My husband was under more stress than any person should have to bear, watching his daughter fight for her life, while feeling powerless to help her. Of course, he was acting differently. But then I met Victoria Chandler. It was a Thursday evening, and I'd brought Martha to Darren's office building because she'd been asking to see where Daddy worked. She was having a good day, the pre-treatment medications were helping with her energy levels, and I thought surprising him might lift his spirits. The elevator opened on the 15th floor, and I immediately spotted Darren through the glass conference room walls. He was leaning over a table covered with documents, standing close to a woman I'd never seen before. She was stunning in that polished, expensive way that made you immediately aware of your own shortcomings. Perfect black hair, designer suit, the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. She was touching his arm while she spoke, her hand lingering longer than necessary. And Darren, my husband, the man who'd promised to love only me, wasn't pulling away. Martha tugged on my hand. "Mommy, is that Daddy?" "Yes, baby. That's Daddy." "Who's the pretty lady?" I didn't have an answer for that. When Darren finally noticed us standing there, his face went through a series of expressions I'd never seen before. Surprise, guilt, something that looked almost like panic. He said something to the woman, who turned to look at us through the glass. Her smile was polite but cold, the kind reserved for interruptions you'd rather not deal with. Darren came out to meet us, his energy forced and uncomfortable. "Liana, what are you doing here? Is everything okay? Is Martha?" "We wanted to surprise you," I said, studying his face. "Martha's been asking about your office." That's great. Really great." He knelt down to hug Martha, but his eyes kept darting back toward the conference room. "But this isn't really a good time. We're in the middle of a big presentation and—" "Darren." The woman had followed him out, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Are you going to introduce me?" There was something in her tone that made my stomach clench. Not professional curiosity, but personal interest. Like she'd been wondering about us. "Of course. Victoria, this is my wife Liana and my daughter Martha. Liana, this is Victoria Chandler, my new supervisor." Victoria extended a perfectly manicured hand. "I've heard so much about you both. Darren talks about his family constantly." The words were right, but something felt off. The way she looked at me, like she was evaluating competition. The way she stood just a little too close to my husband. The way Darren seemed nervous in a way that had nothing to do with work pressure. "It's nice to meet you," I managed. "I hope we're not interrupting anything important." "Not at all. We were just discussing some new opportunities that could be very beneficial for Darren's career." Her smile was sharp. "He's incredibly talented. I think he has a very bright future ahead of him." Martha, who'd been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Daddy, are you coming home for dinner? Mommy made your favorite." Darren's face softened as he looked at our daughter, but when his eyes met mine, I saw something I'd never seen before. Resentment. Like our family dinner was an obligation he'd rather avoid. "I'll try, sweetheart. Daddy has a lot of work to do right now." "Because of my medicine?" Martha asked, her voice small. "Because it costs too much money?" The silence that followed was devastating. Victoria's expression shifted to something that might have been pity, and Darren looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. "No, baby," I said quickly, kneeling down to Martha's level. "Daddy's working hard because he loves us, not because of your medicine. The medicine is going to make you better, and that's all that matters." But over Martha's head, I caught the look that passed between Darren and Victoria. Understanding. Sympathy. The kind of connection that forms between people who share secrets. That night, after Martha was asleep, I tried to talk to Darren about what I'd seen. "She seems nice," I said carefully, watching his reaction. "Your new supervisor. Victoria's great. Really smart, good at her job. The company's lucky to have her." "How long has she been your supervisor?" "About a month. She transferred in from the corporate office." He was folding laundry, not looking at me. "She's been helping me understand some new opportunities for advancement." "What kind of opportunities?" For the first time, he looked directly at me. "The kind that could change everything for us, Liana. The kind that could solve our problems." There was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Hope, but not the kind we'd always shared. This was different. This was hope that didn't include me. What do you mean? I mean, maybe there's a way out of this mess. Maybe I don't have to watch our daughter suffer because we can't afford to help her. Darren, we're going to figure this out. Together. We always do. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Together? Liana, what exactly are you contributing to figuring this out? You work at a children's hospital making $35,000 a year. I'm the one carrying this family financially, and I'm the one who has to find a solution. The words hit me like a physical blow. In 5 years of marriage, Darren had never spoken to me like that. Never made me feel like my contributions didn't matter, like I was a burden instead of a partner. I'm contributing everything I can, I said quietly. I'm taking care of Martha, managing her medical appointments, researching treatment options. That's not enough. The words exploded out of him, and I saw years of frustration and fear finally breaking through. Research doesn't pay bills, Liana. Love doesn't cure cancer. I need real solutions, not emotional support. I stared at my husband, this man I'd loved for 7 years, who'd promised to build a life with me, and realized I was looking at a stranger. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe it's time to be realistic about what we can actually provide for our daughter. Maybe it's time to consider that some opportunities require sacrifices. What opportunities? What sacrifices? But he was already walking away, grabbing his keys from the counter. I'm going back to the office. Don't wait up. He left me standing in our kitchen, surrounded by the life we'd built together, feeling like everything I'd believed about our marriage was crumbling around me. That was the night I should have told him the truth. Should have explained that money would never be a problem, that Martha could have the best care in the world, that we didn't need to sacrifice anything except my pride. Instead, I called my grandmother's lawyer. Ms. Brooks, James Morrison's voice was warm but surprised. It's been quite some time. How can I help you? I need to know about accessing my trust fund. For medical expenses. There was a pause. Of course. May I ask what's changed? Last time we spoke, you were quite adamant about maintaining your independence. My daughter is sick. Very sick. And I think my marriage might be in trouble. I'm sorry to hear that. The trust fund can be accessed at any time, as you know. Would you like me to arrange a transfer? I looked around our little apartment, at the photos of our happy family, at Martha's toys scattered across the living room floor. Once I accessed that money, everything would change. Darren would know who I really was, and I'd never be sure if he stayed for me or for what I could give him. But if I didn't access it, I might lose both my daughter and my husband anyway. Not yet, I said finally. But I might need to soon. Of course. I'll have the paperwork ready whenever you're prepared to move forward. After I hung up, I sat in Martha's room and watched her sleep. She looked so small in her bed, so fragile. The treatment would start next week, and every day after that would be a battle. I'd spent 5 years trying to prove that love was enough. But as I watched my daughter fight for her life and felt my husband slipping away, I was starting to realize that sometimes love wasn't enough at all. Sometimes the people you loved most were the ones who hurt you deepest. And sometimes the very thing you were trying to protect, authentic love, was the first casualty when life got hard. I just didn't know yet how much harder it was about to get. The next morning, Darren was gone before Martha and I woke up. He'd left a note saying he had an early meeting, but his coffee cup was still warm and his side of the bed barely looked slept in. Martha was having another good day, chattering about her upcoming treatment like it was an adventure instead of a fight for her life. Children have this incredible ability to find hope in the darkest situations, and watching her optimism made my heart break and soar at the same time. Mommy, will Daddy come to the hospital with us today? I don't know, sweetheart. He's been very busy at work. Is he sad about my medicine? I knelt down to her level, brushing a curl away from her face. Daddy loves you more than anything in the world. Sometimes grown-ups worry about things, but that doesn't change how much we love you. I love him too. even when he's sad. If only love was enough to fix everything that was breaking around us. The call came that afternoon while I was at work. Darren's voice was different, excited in a way I hadn't heard in weeks. Liana, I need to talk to you. Can you meet me for lunch? I'm working until 6 and then I need to pick up Martha. This is important. Really important. Please. Something in his tone made me agree. I arranged for my coworker to cover the rest of my shift and met him at a small cafe near his office. When I arrived, he was already there, practically vibrating with energy. You look happy, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. I am happy. For the first time in weeks, I actually feel like we might have a way forward. What do you mean? He leaned across the table, his eyes bright with possibility. Victoria's been working on something. A new position, a promotion that would come with a significant salary increase. Enough to cover Martha's treatment, and then some. I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of position? Regional manager. It would mean relocating to the corporate office, but Liana, the salary is more than double what I'm making now. We could afford the best doctors, the best treatment centers. Martha could have everything she needs. Relocating where? Chicago. But that's not the important part. The important part is that we'd finally have the resources to save our daughter. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. You want to move our family to Chicago? While Martha is starting treatment. The treatment would be better there. Better hospitals, better doctors. Victoria's already researched the best pediatric oncology programs in the area. Victoria. Of course she had. Darren, Martha's treatment team is here. Dr. Rodriguez has been planning her care for weeks. We can't just uproot everything. We can't afford not to. His voice was getting sharper. Liana, this is the answer we've been praying for. This is how we save her. And what about me? My job, my life here. You can find another nursing job anywhere. This is about priorities. The casual way he dismissed everything I'd built, everything that mattered to me, felt like another slap. My priorities are Martha's health and our family's stability. Moving across the country while she's fighting cancer doesn't sound stable to me. Staying here and watching her suffer because we can't afford proper treatment doesn't sound stable either. We stared at each other across the table, and I realized we were having our first real fight. Not a disagreement or a misunderstanding, but a fundamental conflict about what was best for our family. When would this happen? I asked quietly. Soon. Victoria needs an answer by the end of the week. That's not enough time to make a decision this big. It's enough time to decide whether we want to save our daughter or not. The accusation in his voice was unmistakable. If I didn't support this plan, I was choosing to let Martha suffer. If I questioned Victoria's involvement, I was being selfish and unreasonable. I need to think about this. What's to think about? This is our chance, Liana. Our only chance. But as I looked at my husband's face, flushed with excitement about a future that Victoria Chandler had designed for him, I realized this wasn't really about Martha's treatment at all. This was about Darren finding a way out of the life we'd built together. And I was starting to understand that I wasn't invited to come along. The decision came faster than I expected, and in a way I never saw coming. I was in Martha's hospital room 3 days later, holding her hand while she received her first round of chemotherapy, when Darren walked in with papers in his hand and an expression I'd never seen before. Determined. Final. Like he'd already made every decision that mattered. Martha was sleeping, the medications making her drowsy, and I was reading quietly beside her bed when he sat down across from me. I took the job, he said without preamble. I looked up from my book, certain I'd misheard. What? The position in Chicago. I accepted it this morning. The words hit me like ice water. Without discussing it with me? We did discuss it. You said you needed to think about it. Thinking about it doesn't mean you get to make the decision alone, Darren. We're married. We're supposed to make these choices together. He glanced at Martha, then back at me. Keep your voice down. And we're making this choice together. I'm telling you what needs to happen, and you're going to support it because it's what's best for our daughter. I stared at this man I'd loved for 7 years, this person who'd promised to be my partner in everything, and realized I was looking at someone I didn't recognize at all. When do you start? 2 weeks. Victoria's arranged for a moving company to help with the transition, and she's already found us a house near the best children's hospital in Chicago. Everything's been taken care of. Victoria. Always Victoria. You mean Victoria's found you a house? What about what I want? What about my job, my life here? Your life is with your family. Your job is taking care of Martha and supporting the decisions that will help her get better. The casual dismissal of everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built independently, felt like a physical blow. But it was the next thing he said that shattered something fundamental inside me. Besides, it's not like your job here is particularly important. $35,000 a year isn't exactly a career worth protecting. I felt my face flush with anger and humiliation. That job helps sick children. It matters to me. What matters is Martha getting the treatment she needs. What matters is our family having financial security. What matters is me being able to provide for you both instead of watching helplessly while our daughter suffers. Our daughter is getting excellent care here. Our daughter is getting the care we can afford here. There's a difference. He leaned forward, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd fallen in love with. Desperate, scared, trying to save his child the only way he knew how. Liana, I know this is hard. I know it's not what we planned. But this is our chance to give Martha everything she needs. Victoria's shown me the numbers, the treatment options, the specialists we could access. We'd be crazy not to take this opportunity. Victoria again. Always Victoria, with her solutions and her numbers and her perfect plans for my husband's future. What exactly has Victoria shown you? Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or defensiveness. She's been helping me research options. She has connections in the medical field, resources we don't have access to here. And what does she get out of helping us so much? She gets a good employee. Someone she can trust to handle the regional position. But the way he said it, the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes, told me there was more to Victoria's interest than professional development. Darren, I need you to be honest with me. Is there something going on between you and Victoria? The question hung in the air between us, and I watched my husband's face cycle through emotions I couldn't read. Surprise, anger, something that might have been relief. How can you ask me that? My daughter is fighting for her life, and you're worried about some imaginary affair. I'm worried about my husband making life-changing decisions with another woman instead of with his wife. Victoria is helping us. She's offering solutions while you're sitting here questioning everything instead of being grateful that someone cares enough to help. I'm questioning everything because my husband is planning to move our family across the country without consulting me. I'm questioning everything because you're spending more time with your boss than with your wife and sick daughter. Martha stirred in her bed, and we both immediately lowered our voices. But the damage was done. The words were out there. The accusations and resentments that had been building for weeks. I'm doing everything I can to save our family, Darren said quietly. If you can't see that, if you can't support that, then maybe you need to think about what's really important to you. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Support his decision or risk losing him entirely. I looked at my daughter, pale and fragile in her hospital bed, fighting a battle she shouldn't have to fight. I looked at my husband, the man who'd promised to love and protect us both, now treating me like an obstacle to overcome instead of a partner to cherish. And I made the decision that would haunt me for months. Okay, I said quietly. If you really think this is what's best for Martha, then we'll make it work. The relief on Darren's face was immediate and devastating. Not relief that we'd found a solution together, but relief that I'd stopped fighting him. You won't regret this, Liana. I promise. This is going to change everything for us. He was right about that. It was going to change everything. just not in the way either of us expected. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of medical appointments, packing, and arrangements I had no part in making. Victoria had indeed taken care of everything, from the moving company to the house rental to Martha's transfer to a new medical team. Every detail had been handled with an efficiency that made it clear this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This had been planned for weeks. I tried to focus on Martha, on making sure her transition would be as smooth as possible. Her current medical team was concerned about interrupting her treatment protocol, but Darren had already made arrangements with doctors in Chicago who assured him they could continue her care seamlessly. It's unusual to change treatment centers mid-protocol, Dr. Rodriguez told me during our final appointment. But if the family situation requires it, we'll make sure the new team has everything they need. Family situation. As if my husband's career ambitions were a medical emergency. The night before we were supposed to leave, I was packing Martha's room when I found Darren on the phone in our bedroom. The door was cracked, and I could hear his voice, softer and more intimate than it had been with me in weeks. I know it's been hard, keeping this quiet. But after tomorrow, everything will be different. We can finally be together the way we want to be. I froze in the hallway, Martha's stuffed animals clutched in my hands. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She thinks this is all about Martha's treatment and the job opportunity. She has no idea what we've been planning. My heart stopped beating. The stuffed animals fell from my hands, hitting the floor with soft thuds that sounded like thunder in the silence. Victoria, I love you. I've loved you since the day we met. Tomorrow we start our real life together. I stood in that hallway, listening to my husband plan his future with another woman, and felt something inside me die completely. The man I'd loved, the father of my child, the person I'd trusted with my heart and my secrets and my dreams, had been planning to leave us all along. The job, the move, the concern for Martha's treatment, it was all just an elaborate way to start over with someone else. I walked back to Martha's room on unsteady legs and sat on her little bed, surrounded by the remnants of the life we'd built together. Her drawings covered the walls, pictures of our family smiling and happy. Mommy, Daddy, and Martha holding hands under a bright yellow sun. In every single drawing, we were together. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and dialed the number I'd memorized but never used. James Morrison. It's Liana Brooks. I need to access my trust fund. All of it. Tonight. There was a pause. Ms. Brooks, are you certain? Once we begin this process. I'm certain. My marriage is over and I need to protect my daughter. I'll have the paperwork ready within the hour. Should I arrange for transportation to the office? I looked around Martha's room, at the boxes packed for a move that would never happen, at the life I'd been about to abandon for a man who'd already abandoned us. Yes. Send the car. And Ms. Brooks? I'm sorry. For whatever's brought you to this decision. Thank you, James. But I'm not sorry anymore. I'm done being sorry. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of our apartment and let myself feel the full weight of what I'd just learned. My husband didn't love me. Maybe he never had. He'd been planning to leave us, to start over with Victoria, using Martha's illness as cover for his betrayal. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated exactly who he was betraying. In 3 hours, I would have access to more money than Darren could imagine. In 3 hours, I would become the CEO of a global empire that could buy and sell his precious Victoria's company 100 times over. In 3 hours, I would stop being the struggling wife he could discard and become the most powerful woman he'd ever met. And he was going to learn that lesson in the most public, devastating way possible. But first, I had to save my daughter. And then I had to save myself. The car that arrived at midnight wasn't what I expected. I'd been picturing something modest, professional. Instead, a sleek black sedan pulled up to our building, and a driver in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out to open my door. Ms. Brooks? I'm Thomas. Mr. Morrison is waiting for you at the office. I looked back at our apartment building, at the windows of the home where I'd been happy for 5 years, where I'd believed in love and partnership and the possibility of building something beautiful with another person. Then I got in the car and let that version of myself die completely. The law offices of Morrison, Klein and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of one of the city's most prestigious buildings. At midnight, the place should have been empty, but lights blazed from the windows, and I could see people moving around inside. James Morrison met me in the lobby personally. He was older than I'd expected, with silver hair and kind eyes that reminded me of my grandmother. Ms. Brooks, it's an honor to finally meet you in person. Your grandmother spoke of you often. Thank you for arranging this so quickly. Of course. Though I have to ask, are you prepared for what this means? Once you claim your inheritance, your life will change completely. There's no going back to anonymity. I thought about Darren on the phone with Victoria, planning their future while our daughter slept in the next room. I thought about the casual way he dismissed my career, my contributions, my worth as a human being. There's no going back anyway. My husband is leaving me for another woman. He's using our daughter's illness as an excuse to start over with someone else. I need to protect Martha, and I need to protect myself. James nodded grimly. Then let's make sure you have everything you need to do both. The next 4 hours were a blur of paperwork, signatures, and revelations that left me reeling. My grandmother's empire was even larger than I'd remembered. Real estate holdings across 6 continents. Technology companies that had shaped the modern world. Investment portfolios that generated more money in a day than most people saw in a lifetime. And now it was all mine. The transition will take a few days to complete, James explained as dawn broke over the city. But as of this moment, you are the majority shareholder and CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises. The board has been waiting for this day for 5 years. What about my husband? What about the move to Chicago? That's entirely up to you. You have the resources now to provide your daughter with the best medical care in the world, wherever you choose to receive it. You also have the power to make life very difficult for anyone who's wronged you. I thought about Victoria Chandler and her promises of advancement. I thought about the company that employed both her and my husband, the company that was probably celebrating their new regional manager right about now. James, I want you to research something for me. Victoria Chandler and the company where my husband works. I want to know everything about their business relationships, their financial situation, their vulnerabilities. Of course. Anything else? Yes. I want to buy them. James smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Now you're thinking like your grandmother. I left the law office as the sun was rising, carrying documents that made me one of the most powerful people in the world. But all I could think about was getting home to Martha, making sure she was okay, preparing for the conversation that would end my marriage forever. Darren was in the kitchen when I walked in, drinking coffee and checking his phone. He looked up when he heard the door, and his expression was almost guilty. Where were you? I woke up and you were gone. I had some things to take care of. At 5 in the morning? Liana, we're supposed to leave in a few hours. The movers will be here soon. I looked at this man who'd shared my bed for 5 years, who'd held my hand during labor, who'd promised to love me through everything life could throw at us. And I felt nothing but pity. Darren, we need to talk. Can it wait? I still have packing to finish, and Victoria's expecting us to. No, it can't wait. Something in my tone made him look at me more carefully. What's wrong? I know about Victoria. I know about your plans. I know this move isn't about Martha's treatment or your career. I know you're leaving me for her. The color drained from his face. Liana, I don't know what you think you heard. I heard you on the phone last night, telling her you loved her, talking about starting your real life together, planning how to keep me from finding out. He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched him calculate his options. Deny everything and hope I'd believe him? Confess and try to minimize the damage? Attack me for eavesdropping? He chose the attack. You were spying on me? I was packing our daughter's room while you were planning to abandon her. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm trying to build a better life for all of us. A better life that doesn't include me. A better life that includes someone who supports my ambitions instead of questioning every decision I make. Someone who understands what I'm trying to accomplish instead of making me feel guilty for wanting more than this. He gestured around our small apartment, and I realized he'd been ashamed of our life together. Ashamed of me, of what I could provide, of the simple happiness we'd built. What we have isn't enough for you anymore? What we have is barely surviving, Liana. I'm tired of struggling. I'm tired of watching my daughter suffer because we can't afford better. I'm tired of feeling like a failure because I can't provide the life you and Martha deserve. So your solution is to abandon us for someone with more money? My solution is to find someone who can help me become the man I'm supposed to be. Victoria sees my potential. She believes in me. She's offering me opportunities you could never understand. The irony was so perfect it almost made me laugh. Here was my husband, leaving me for a woman with money and connections, never knowing that I had more of both than he could ever imagine. And what about Martha? What about your daughter who needs you? Martha will be better off with the resources Victoria and I can provide together. Better schools, better medical care, better opportunities. Sometimes love means making hard choices. Love means staying. Love means fighting for your family. Love means not abandoning your sick child for a promotion. I'm not abandoning her. I'm securing her future. You're securing your future. There's a difference. We stared at each other across our kitchen table, and I realized this was the end. Not just of our marriage, but of every dream I'd had about love conquering everything, about building something real with someone who valued authenticity over wealth. I want a divorce, I said quietly. Relief flooded his face so quickly he couldn't hide it. Liana, if that's what you think is best. I do. And I want you out of this apartment today. What about Martha? What about her treatment? Martha will receive the best treatment available. I'll make sure of that. How? With your nursing salary? Liana, be realistic. You can't afford. I can afford more than you think. Something in my tone made him pause. What does that mean? I looked at the man who'd just destroyed our family, who'd chosen ambition over love, who'd abandoned his sick daughter for a woman with connections, and I made a decision. He would learn who I really was. But not from me. He would learn it when the whole world was watching. It means Martha and I will be fine without you. Better than the next 3 months were the strangest of my life. I was living in 2 completely different worlds, and the contrast was almost surreal. During the day, I was still Liana Brooks, single mother and nurse, living in our small apartment and taking Martha to her treatments at the local children's hospital. To everyone who knew us, I was the woman Darren had left behind, struggling financially, overwhelmed by medical bills, barely keeping my head above water. But at night, after Martha was asleep, I was someone else entirely. I was the CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises, making decisions that affected thousands of employees and billions in revenue. I attended board meetings via secure video calls, reviewed acquisition proposals, and slowly began to understand the true scope of the empire my grandmother had built. The duality was exhausting, but it was also necessary. I needed time to plan, to understand my new role, and most importantly, to make sure Martha's treatment continued without interruption. Her health was improving steadily, and I wasn't about to disrupt that progress for anything, even revenge. James Morrison had become my closest advisor during this transition. He worked with my grandmother for 30 years, and he understood both the business and the family dynamics better than anyone. The board is eager to meet you in person, he told me during one of our late-night calls. They've been running the company in your absence, but they need direction from the actual owner. Soon, I promised. I'm not ready to go public yet. May I ask why? You have every right to claim your position immediately. I looked toward Martha's room, where she was sleeping peacefully after another successful treatment session. Because I want to make sure my daughter is stable first. And because I want to understand exactly what my ex-husband and his new girlfriend are up to. The research James had compiled on Victoria Chandler and Darren's company was fascinating. Victoria wasn't just a regional supervisor. She was the daughter of the company's largest client, a manufacturing conglomerate that provided 60% of their revenue. Her relationship with Darren wasn't just personal, it was strategic. She was using him to secure her own position within the company, and he was too blinded by ambition to see it. There's something else you should know, James had told me the week before. Victoria Chandler's father is looking to sell his manufacturing business. He's been in talks with several potential buyers. Including us? We could be. Brooks Global has the resources to acquire his company easily. In fact, it would be a smart investment. I'd smiled at that. Set up a meeting. But don't mention my involvement yet. I want to see how this plays out. Meanwhile, Darren was living his new life in Chicago, completely unaware that his ex-wife was quietly positioning herself to control his entire future. He called occasionally to check on Martha, and those conversations were torture. Not because I missed him, that feeling had died the night I heard him planning his betrayal, but because I had to pretend to be struggling when I could have solved every problem he mentioned with a single phone call. "How are the medical bills?" he asked during one particularly difficult conversation. "Are you managing okay?" "We're managing," I said, watching Martha play with toys that cost more than his monthly salary. "Martha's responding well to treatment." "That's good. That's really good. I've been worried about the financial pressure on you." The concern in his voice might have been genuine, but it was too little, too late. "We're fine, Darren. You don't need to worry about us anymore. I'll always worry about Martha. She's my daughter." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you left." There was a long pause. "Liana, I know you're angry, but this move has been good for everyone. My new position is going really well, and Victoria's been incredible about helping me adjust." Victoria. Always Victoria. "I'm glad you're happy." "I am. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm actually building something meaningful. Victoria's father is considering bringing me into his business as a partner. Can you imagine? Me, a partner in a multi-million-dollar company." I could imagine it. I could also imagine what would happen when Victoria's father discovered that his potential new partner's ex-wife owned a company that could buy his business without checking the quarterly budget. "That sounds wonderful, Darren." It is. And the best part is, once this partnership goes through, I'll be able to help more with Martha's expenses. Really help, not just the small amounts I've been sending. The small amounts. He was talking about the $300 a month he'd been contributing to our daughter's medical care that was actually being covered by the best insurance money could buy, arranged through my company's executive benefits package. "That's very generous of you. I want to do right by both of you. I know things ended badly between us, but I never wanted you to struggle." The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Here was the man who'd left me because he thought I couldn't contribute financially, offering to help me with expenses I could cover with the interest my investments earned in a single day. "Martha wants to talk to you," I said, unable to continue the conversation without screaming. I handed the phone to our daughter and listened to her tell her father about her day, her treatment, her hopes that he'd visit soon. She still loved him unconditionally, still believed he was the hero who would make everything better. Children forgive so easily. Adults, not so much. After Martha went to bed that night, I called James with a new request. "I want to accelerate the timeline. How quickly can we arrange the acquisition of Chandler Manufacturing? If you're serious about this, we could have a preliminary offer ready within the week." "But Liana, are you certain this is the path you want to take? Once you reveal yourself, there's no going back to anonymity." "I'm certain. But I want to do this right. I want to make sure Martha is completely stable first, and I want to make sure the timing is perfect." "What kind of timing are you thinking?" I smiled, thinking about the wedding invitation that had arrived in my mailbox that morning. Darren and Victoria, requesting the pleasure of my company at their celebration of love and new beginnings. They're getting married in 6 weeks. I want to make my move right before the wedding. That's dramatic. My grandmother always said that timing was everything in business. I think she'd approve. The next few weeks passed in a blur of careful planning and strategic positioning. I continued my double life, playing the struggling single mother while quietly arranging one of the largest corporate acquisitions in recent history. Martha's health continued to improve, which was the only thing that really mattered. Her hair was starting to grow back, her energy was returning, and her doctors were cautiously optimistic about her long-term prognosis. "Mommy, when will I be all better?" she asked one evening as I was tucking her into bed. "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon. Will Daddy come home when I'm better?" The question broke my heart every time she asked it. "Daddy has a new life now, baby. But that doesn't mean he loves you any less. I miss him. I know you do. And that's okay. It's okay to miss people, even when they make choices that hurt us." "Are you sad that Daddy left?" I considered how to answer that. Was I sad? Or was I something else entirely? I'm sad that our family changed. But I'm not sad about who we're becoming. You and I are going to be just fine, Martha. Better than fine. Promise? I promise. And I meant it. We were going to be more than fine. We were going to be extraordinary. The wedding invitation had been a surprise, but not an unwelcome one. Darren and Victoria were planning a lavish ceremony at one of Chicago's most exclusive venues, with a guest list that included everyone important in their professional and social circles, including Victoria's father, the man who was about to sell his company to a mysterious buyer he'd never met, including Darren's colleagues, who had no idea their new regional manager's ex-wife was about to become their ultimate boss, including Victoria herself, who thought she'd won the prize by stealing another woman's husband. They had no idea what was coming. James had arranged everything perfectly. The acquisition of Chandler Manufacturing would be announced the morning of the wedding, with the new owner revealed as Brooks Global Enterprises. The press conference was scheduled for noon, just hours before the ceremony was set to begin. "Are you planning to attend the wedding?" James asked during our final planning meeting. "Oh yes. I wouldn't miss it for the world." "And you're prepared for the fallout?" "This will be very public, very dramatic. There's no taking it back once it's done." I thought about Martha, sleeping peacefully in her room, healthy and strong, and completely unaware that her mother was about to become one of the most powerful women in the world. I thought about Darren, probably trying on his tuxedo right now, preparing to marry a woman who'd helped him abandon his sick child. I thought about Victoria, planning her perfect wedding, believing she'd secured her future by seducing someone else's husband. I'm prepared. They made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences. Your grandmother would be proud. I hope so. Because tomorrow, everyone's going to know exactly who Liana Brooks really is. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early and spent extra time getting ready. Not for the ceremony, that would come later, but for the press conference that would change everything. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A tailored navy suit that conveyed authority without being flashy, minimal jewelry except for my grandmother's pearl earrings, and my hair pulled back in a style that meant business. Martha was spending the day with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd become like a grandmother to her over the past few months. She had no idea what was about to happen, and I wanted to keep it that way until I could explain everything properly. "You look pretty, Mommy," Martha said as I kissed her goodbye. "Are you going to work?" "Something like that, sweetheart. I'll be back tonight, and we'll talk about some exciting changes coming our way." "Good changes. Very good changes." The press conference was held at the downtown headquarters of Brooks Global Enterprises, in a building I'd never set foot in before but now owned completely. James met me in the lobby, and I could see the pride in his eyes. "Ready for this?" "I've been ready for months." The conference room was packed with reporters, business analysts, and representatives from every major financial publication in the country. The acquisition of Chandler Manufacturing was big news, a multi-billion-dollar deal that would reshape the industry. What they didn't know is that the story was about to get much more interesting. I walked to the podium with confidence I'd been building for 30 years, even if I'd only recently learned to use it. The room fell silent as I approached the microphone. Good morning. My name is Liana Brooks, and I am the CEO and majority shareholder of Brooks Global Enterprises. Today, I'm pleased to announce our acquisition of Chandler Manufacturing, a deal that will strengthen our position in the global marketplace and create new opportunities for growth and innovation. The questions came immediately, as I'd expected. Who was I? Where had I come from? How had I managed to arrange such a massive acquisition seemingly overnight? I answered them all with the poise my grandmother had taught me, even when I was too young to understand why those lessons mattered. Ms. Brooks, one reporter called out, "This is your first public appearance as CEO. Can you tell us about your background, your vision for the company?" I've been preparing for this role my entire life, though I chose to live privately until now. As for my vision, it's simple. Brooks Global will continue to be a leader in innovation, ethical business practices, and creating value for all our stakeholders. What prompted you to step into this role now? I smiled, thinking about the wedding that would begin in just a few hours. Sometimes life presents you with opportunities to right certain wrongs. I believe in justice, in accountability, and in making sure that people face the consequences of their choices. Can you be more specific about what that means? You'll understand very soon. Thank you all for coming. As I left the podium, I could hear the buzz of excitement and confusion behind me. The business world was trying to figure out who I was, where I'd come from, how I'd managed to acquire such massive wealth and power without anyone noticing. They'd have their answers soon enough. But first, I had a wedding to attend. The wedding venue was everything I'd expected from Victoria Chandler, opulent, excessive, and designed to impress rather than celebrate love. The grand ballroom at the Palmer House gleamed with crystal chandeliers and gold accents, filled with Chicago's social and business elite. I arrived fashionably late, after the ceremony had begun, but before the vows were exchanged. I'd changed from my business suit into something more appropriate for the occasion, a stunning black dress that whispered wealth and power without screaming it. The irony of wearing black to their wedding wasn't lost on me. I slipped into the back of the ceremony space just as the officiant was asking if anyone had objections to the union. For a moment, I considered speaking up. The dramatic timing would have been perfect. But I had something better planned. From my seat in the last row, I watched my ex-husband marry another woman. Darren looked handsome in his tuxedo, confident and happy in a way I hadn't seen in months before our divorce. Victoria was radiant in a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, her smile brilliant as she gazed at her new husband. They looked perfect together. Two people who'd found exactly what they were looking for in each other. Too bad it was all about to fall apart. During the cocktail hour, I mingled quietly with the other guests, listening to conversations about business deals, social connections, and the bright future ahead for the happy couple. Several people mentioned the morning's news about Brooks Global's acquisition, speculating about the mysterious new CEO who'd appeared seemingly from nowhere. "Did you see the press conference?" I heard one woman say to her companion. "This Liana Brooks woman just bought Chandler Manufacturing like it was a piece of jewelry. Nobody knows where she came from." "I heard she's some kind of tech heiress," her friend replied. "Old money, very private. The kind of wealth that doesn't need to show off." If only they knew how right they were. I was standing near the bar, observing the crowd, when Victoria's father approached me. Richard Chandler was a distinguished man in his 70s, with sharp eyes that had built a manufacturing empire from nothing. "I don't believe we've met," he said, extending his hand. "Richard Chandler, father of the bride." "Liana Brooks," I replied, shaking his hand. Congratulations on your daughter's wedding. She looks beautiful. Thank you. Brooks, that name sounds familiar. Have we done business together? In a way. I believe you just sold your company to mine. The color drained from his face as the realization hit him. You're the CEO of Brooks Global? I am. But what are you doing here? How do you know Victoria and Darren? I smiled, enjoying the moment more than I probably should have. Darren is my ex-husband. We divorced 3 months ago so he could marry your daughter. Richard Chandler stared at me like I'd just told him the earth was flat. That's impossible. Darren's ex-wife is a nurse. A struggling single mother with medical bills she can't afford. I am a nurse. And I was struggling in a way. Just not financially. I don't understand. You will. Very soon. Before he could ask more questions, the wedding coordinator announced that dinner was being served. I found my assigned seat at a table in the back, clearly where they'd hoped I'd be invisible, and prepared to enjoy the show. The reception began with all the traditional elements. The first dance, the toasts, the cake cutting. Darren and Victoria played their parts perfectly, the picture of happiness and success. During the best man's speech, I learned more about their relationship than I'd known before. Apparently, Victoria had been supporting Darren through a difficult divorce and had helped him realize his true potential. The best man praised her for seeing past his circumstances to the man he could become. The irony was so thick I could taste it. It was during the father of the bride speech that things began to unravel. Richard Chandler stood at the microphone, looking pale and shaken. He'd clearly been thinking about our conversation, trying to piece together what it meant. Victoria has always been my pride and joy, he began, his voice slightly unsteady. She's intelligent, ambitious, and she's always known what she wanted. When she told me about Darren, about their plans for the future, I was happy to support them. He paused, his eyes finding mine across the room. But sometimes, life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes, the people we think we know turn out to be completely different than we imagined. Victoria looked confused by her father's tone. Darren was smiling, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. Today, I learned something that changes everything I thought I knew about this situation. And I think it's only fair that everyone else learns it too. The room fell silent. Victoria's smile faltered. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet someone very special. The woman who just purchased my company for more money than I ever dreamed possible. The CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises. And, as it turns out, Darren's ex-wife. He gestured toward me, and every head in the room turned to stare. Liana Brooks, would you like to say a few words? The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Darren's face from across the room, watching him process what he'd just heard. Confusion, disbelief, and then slowly, horrible understanding. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked to the microphone with the confidence of someone who owned half the companies represented in that room. Thank you, Richard. And congratulations again on the sale. I think you'll find Brooks Global to be an excellent steward of your life's work. I turned to face the crowd, my eyes finding Darren's shocked face. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but since Richard has been so gracious, I suppose I should introduce myself properly. My name is Liana Brooks, and I am indeed the CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises. I'm also, as Richard mentioned, Darren's ex-wife. The murmur that went through the crowd was like electricity. Some of you might be wondering how a struggling nurse could afford to buy a multi-billion-dollar company. The answer is simple. I was never actually struggling. I chose to live modestly because I wanted to find someone who would love me for who I was, not what I could provide. I looked directly at Darren, who was now standing frozen beside his new wife. I thought I'd found that person. I thought I'd found someone who valued love over money, partnership over profit, family over ambition. I was wrong. Victoria had gone completely white. She was beginning to understand the magnitude of what was happening. 3 months ago, my husband left me and our sick daughter for another woman. He said I couldn't provide the life he deserved, that I was holding him back from his true potential. He said he needed someone who could help him become the man he was meant to be. The room was so quiet you could hear the crystal chandeliers tinkling in the air conditioning. What he didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, was that I was already the person who could give him everything he wanted. I just chose not to, because I wanted to be loved for myself, not my inheritance. I paused, letting that sink in. Darren, you left a billionaire for a millionaire's daughter. You abandoned your sick child because you thought her mother couldn't afford her medical bills. You threw away a marriage to someone who could have given you the world because you were too impatient to wait for her to offer it. Darren tried to speak, but no words came out. And Victoria, you seduced a married man away from his dying daughter because you thought he could help advance your career. You built your happiness on the destruction of a family, never knowing that the woman you were destroying had more power than you could ever dream of having. Victoria found her voice first. This is impossible. You're lying. Darren's ex-wife is nobody. She's nothing. I was nobody to him. That was the problem. I turned back to the crowd, many of whom were now recording with their phones. I want everyone here to understand something important. I didn't reveal my identity to hurt these two people, though I admit their pain brings me a certain satisfaction. I revealed it because I want my daughter to grow up knowing that her mother is strong, powerful, and capable of protecting her from anyone who would abandon her. The tears were starting now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of justice, of finally being able to stop pretending to be less than I was. Martha is healthy now, by the way. Her treatment was successful, thanks to the best medical care money can buy. The medical care I could have provided from the beginning, if her father had bothered to ask about my resources instead of assuming I had none. I looked at Darren one more time, this man who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my daughter's first steps. You wanted someone who could help you become the man you were meant to be, Darren. Congratulations. You've become exactly that. A man who abandons his family for money, who chooses ambition over love, who destroys everything good in his life chasing something he already had. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and one more thing. Victoria, your father's company now belongs to me. Which means, in a way, so do you. I'll be in touch about your future employment status. The silence that followed me out of that ballroom was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. But as I walked toward the exit, I heard footsteps behind me. Darren's voice, desperate and broken. Liana, wait. Please. I turned to face my ex-husband, this man who destroyed our family for a promotion and a woman with connections. What do you want, Darren? I want to understand. How is this possible? How long have you been? How long were you? Rich? My entire life. I've been the heir to Brooks Global since the day I was born. I chose to live simply because I wanted to find real love. I wanted someone who would choose me for me. But why didn't you tell me? We could have had everything. Martha could have had the best treatment from the beginning. Because I wanted to know if you'd love me when things got hard. I wanted to know if you'd stand by me when life wasn't easy. I got my answer. I was trying to save our family. I was trying to provide for you and Martha. You were trying to save yourself. There's a difference. He stared at me, and I could see him trying to process the magnitude of what he'd lost. Not just a wife, but an empire. Not just a family, but a fortune beyond his wildest dreams. What happens now? Now you live with your choices. You married Victoria for her connections and her father's money. Congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. And Martha? What about my daughter? Martha will grow up knowing her mother is strong enough to protect her from anyone who would abandon her. She'll grow up with every advantage money can provide, and more importantly, she'll grow up knowing she's loved unconditionally. Can I see her? Can I be part of her life? I considered the question, looking at this man who'd chosen his career over his child's health, who'd planned his future with another woman while our daughter fought for her life. That's up to Martha. When she's old enough to understand what happened, She can decide if she wants a relationship with the father who left her when she needed him most. Liana, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. If I had known. If you had known I was rich, you would have stayed. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. I turned to leave again, but his voice stopped me one more time. Do you hate me? I thought about the question, really considered it. Did I hate him? Or was what I felt something else entirely? No, Darren. I don't hate you. I pity you. You had everything that mattered, and you threw it away for things that don't. You had a wife who loved you, a daughter who adored you, and a life that was real and authentic and beautiful. You traded it all for money and status and a woman who only wanted you for what you could provide. And now? Now you have exactly what you chose. I hope it makes you happy. I walked out of that ballroom and into the Chicago night, leaving behind the last remnants of the woman I used to be. The woman who believed love conquered everything, who thought authenticity mattered more than wealth, who trusted that good people would make good choices when tested. That woman was gone forever. In her place was someone stronger, someone who understood that sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to embrace the power you've been given. Someone who would never again apologize for being more than other people expected. Someone who would never again hide her light to make others comfortable. I was Liana Brooks, CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises, mother to Martha Brooks, and the woman who'd just shown the world what happened when you underestimated the quiet ones. And this was only the beginning. The aftermath of the wedding revelation hit faster and harder than I'd anticipated. Within hours, the video of my speech had gone viral. Social media exploded with commentary, news outlets picked up the story, and suddenly I wasn't just the mysterious new CEO of Brooks Global, I was the woman who'd exposed her cheating ex-husband at his own wedding. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire heiress destroys ex-husband's wedding, the ultimate revenge. CEO reveals identity at cheater's ceremony. From nurse to billionaire, the most expensive divorce in history. But while the world was fascinated by the drama, I was dealing with consequences I hadn't fully considered. Martha saw the news. I'd planned to sit her down and explain everything gently to help her understand the changes coming to our lives. Instead, she learned about it from Mrs. Patterson, who'd been watching the evening news when the story broke. "Mommy," Martha said when I got home that night, her voice small and confused. "Mrs. Patterson says you're famous now. She says you're really rich and Daddy was on TV." I knelt down to her level, my heart breaking at the uncertainty in her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. Some things are going to change for us. Are we moving? Are we leaving our home? We might move to a bigger place, but only if you want to. And only somewhere that makes you happy. Will Daddy come back now? Now that we have money?" The question I'd been dreading. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her father left not because of money, but because of character? Daddy made his choice, Martha. He has a new wife now and a new life. That doesn't change how much he loves you, but it means our family looks different now. But if we're rich, maybe he'll want to come home. Baby, people who love you don't leave because of money, and they don't come back because of money either. Real love isn't about what you have, it's about who you are. She was quiet for a long moment, processing this in the way children do. "Are you sad that everyone knows about our money now?" "No, sweetheart. I'm not sad. I'm ready for people to know who we really are." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of media attention, business meetings, and adjustments I hadn't prepared for. Moving from anonymity to being one of the most talked about women in the country was jarring in ways I hadn't expected. Photographers followed us to Martha's doctor appointments. Reporters called our apartment at all hours. People I'd never met suddenly wanted to be my best friend, while others accused me of being cruel, vindictive, and manipulative. The worst part was watching how it affected Martha. She couldn't go to school without being stared at. Other parents whispered when we walked by. Her friends started treating her differently, either with awe or suspicion, and she began to withdraw in ways that terrified me. "I don't want to be rich," she told me one evening after a particularly difficult day. "I want to be normal again." "What happened today, baby?" Emma's mom said, "I think I'm better than everyone now." And Tyler said his dad says you're mean for embarrassing my daddy on TV. I felt my heart shatter. This was exactly what I'd been trying to avoid by living simply: the judgment, the assumptions, the way money changed how people saw you. Do you think I'm mean? No. But I don't understand why everyone is so angry. Sometimes when people don't understand something, they get scared or angry. And sometimes when people see others have more than they do, it makes them feel bad about themselves. I miss when it was just us and nobody cared about our money. I know, sweetheart. I miss that too. And I did. Despite everything Darren had done, despite the justice of revealing the truth, I missed the simplicity of our old life. I missed being able to take Martha to the park without photographers. I missed grocery shopping without people recognizing me. I missed the anonymity that had allowed us to just be ourselves. But there was no going back now. The business side of my new life was equally challenging. Taking over as active CEO of Brooks Global meant learning systems and relationships that had been developing for decades. The board was supportive but cautious, watching to see if I could handle the pressure of running a global empire. "The transition is going well," James Morrison told me during one of our weekly meetings. "But there are some concerns about the media attention. Some of our more conservative clients are worried about the company's image." "What kind of concerns?" "They're questioning whether someone who would publicly humiliate her ex-husband has the judgment to run their business partnerships." I felt a flash of anger. So a woman who exposes a cheating husband is unstable, but a man who abandons his sick child is just making tough choices? I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just telling you what we're hearing. And what's your recommendation? Lay low for a while. Let the media attention die down. Focus on the business and let your work speak for itself. But laying low wasn't an option because Darren wasn't done making my life complicated. 3 weeks after the wedding, he filed for emergency custody of Martha. The legal papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who looked apologetic about the whole situation. I read through the documents with growing disbelief and rage. Darren was claiming that my erratic behavior and public vindictiveness made me an unfit mother. He argued that Martha needed stability and that my newfound wealth and media attention were creating an unhealthy environment for a child. He wanted full custody with supervised visitation for me. The man who'd abandoned his sick daughter was now trying to take her away from the mother who'd saved her life. I called my lawyer immediately. "This is ridiculous," Patricia Williams said after reviewing the filing. "He has no grounds for this. You've been Martha's primary caregiver throughout her illness, you've provided excellent medical care, and there's no evidence of any kind of instability. Then why is he doing this? Honestly, I think he's panicking. He's realized what he lost, and he's trying to find a way to get some of it back. If he has custody of Martha, he has a connection to your wealth. Over my dead body. We'll fight this, Liana. But I have to warn you, custody battles can get ugly, especially with this much media attention. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Martha, about the confusion and pain she was already experiencing from all the changes in our lives. The idea of putting her through a custody battle made me sick. But the idea of letting Darren take her away made me sicker. I'm prepared for whatever it takes. The custody battle began immediately, and it was every bit as ugly as Patricia had warned. Darren's lawyers painted me as an unstable woman who'd used her wealth to seek revenge, who'd exposed her daughter to unnecessary media attention, who'd prioritized humiliating her ex-husband over protecting her child. They brought up every moment of the past few months, twisting them into evidence of my unfitness as a mother. The fact that I'd hidden my wealth was presented as evidence of deception. The wedding speech was characterized as vindictive and cruel. Even my decision to provide Martha with the best medical care was somehow turned into proof that I was using money to manipulate situations. Mrs. Matthews, excuse me, Ms. Brooks, isn't it true that you deliberately deceived your husband about your financial status throughout your marriage? Darren's lawyer asked during my deposition. I chose to live modestly to see if I could find authentic love. So you lied to him. I omitted information. There's a difference. And isn't it true that you could have prevented your daughter's medical crisis by revealing your wealth earlier? Martha received excellent medical care throughout her treatment. But she could have received it sooner, with less stress on the family, if you had been honest about your resources. The implication was clear. I'd let my daughter suffer to protect my secret. Martha's treatment began as soon as she was diagnosed. Her medical team was excellent, and her outcome was successful. But the financial stress contributed to the breakdown of your marriage, didn't it? My husband's decision to have an affair contributed to the breakdown of our marriage. An affair that might never have happened if you'd been honest about who you really were. I wanted to scream. They were making Darren's betrayal my fault, suggesting that his decision to abandon his family was somehow justified by my choice to live simply. The worst part was the effect it was having on Martha. She had to be interviewed by a court-appointed psychologist. She had to answer questions about whether she felt safe with me, whether she understood why Daddy had left, whether she wanted to live with him instead. The psychologist says Martha is confused about the changes in her life, Patricia told me after the evaluation. She's not expressing any preference for living with her father, but she's clearly struggling with all the upheaval. What does that mean for our case? It means we need to show that you can provide stability, not just wealth. The court wants to see that Martha's best interests are your priority, not revenge against your ex-husband. Martha has always been my priority. Everything I've done has been to protect her. I believe that. But we need to prove it. The media coverage of the custody battle was relentless. Every court filing was analyzed, every statement was dissected, every photo of Martha and me was scrutinized for signs of dysfunction. The comments online were brutal. Half the people supported me as a strong woman who'd stood up to a cheating husband. The other half condemned me as a vindictive ex-wife who was using her wealth to destroy a man who'd simply fallen in love with someone else. Billionaire bitch tries to buy her way out of bad parenting, read one particularly charming headline. Rich woman's revenge. Is money more important than her daughter's happiness? Asked another. I stopped reading the coverage, but I couldn't escape it entirely. It was everywhere, and it was affecting every aspect of our lives. Martha's school recommended that she take a leave of absence until things settled down. My business meetings were constantly interrupted by questions about the custody case. Even grocery shopping became an ordeal of stares and whispers. I was beginning to understand why my grandmother had been so protective of our family's privacy. Wealth brought power, but it also brought scrutiny that could destroy everything you were trying to protect. The lowest point came 6 weeks into the custody battle, when Martha asked me a question that broke my heart completely. Mommy, would it be easier if I went to live with Daddy? We were sitting in our living room, surrounded by legal documents and newspaper clippings I'd been trying to hide from her. She looked so small and tired, worn down by weeks of interviews and evaluations and constant attention. Why would you ask that, sweetheart? Because everyone is fighting about me. And maybe if I lived with Daddy, people would stop being mean to you. I pulled her into my lap, holding her close while I tried to find the right words. Martha, listen to me very carefully. None of this is your fault. The fighting isn't about you. It's about grown-ups making bad choices and trying to fix them in the wrong ways. But if I wasn't here, if you weren't here, my life would have no meaning. You are the most important thing in the world to me. More important than money, more important than what people think, more important than anything. Then why is Daddy trying to take me away? How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her father was using her as a weapon? That he was trying to hurt me by threatening to take away the person I loved most? Sometimes people make mistakes, baby. Big mistakes that hurt the people they're supposed to love. Like when Daddy left us? Yes, like when Daddy left us. Are you going to leave me too? The question hit me like a physical blow. Never. I will never leave you, Martha. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says or does, I will always be here for you. Promise? I promise. But even as I made that promise, I was terrified that it might be taken out of my hands. The custody battle was getting uglier by the day, and I was starting to realize that having unlimited resources didn't guarantee victory when the system itself was biased against you. Darren's lawyers were painting a picture of a woman so consumed with revenge that she'd lost sight of her daughter's needs. They were arguing that Martha would be better off with a father who could provide stability and normalcy, away from the media circus that surrounded me. And the worst part was, some days I wondered if they were right. Had my need for justice put Martha in danger? Had my decision to reveal the truth at the wedding created more problems than it solved? Was I so focused on making Darren pay for his betrayal that I'd forgotten what was really important? The doubt was eating me alive, and I could see it affecting every decision I made. I was second-guessing myself constantly, wondering if every choice I made was the right one for Martha or just the one that felt good for me. The breaking point came during a particularly brutal day in court, when Darren took the stand to testify about why he should have custody of our daughter. "I love Martha more than anything," he said, his voice breaking with what seemed like genuine emotion. "She's been through so much with her illness, and now she's being put through even more because of her mother's need for revenge." "Can you elaborate on that?" his lawyer prompted. "Liana has turned our private family matters into a public spectacle. Martha can't go to school without being stared at. She can't play with her friends without photographers following her. She's living in a fishbowl because her mother chose to humiliate me publicly instead of handling our divorce privately. And what kind of environment do you think would be better for Martha? A normal one. A quiet one. Somewhere she can just be a kid instead of the daughter of the woman who destroyed her father's wedding." I watched the judge's face as Darren spoke, and I could see the impact his words were having. He sounded reasonable, concerned, like a father who just wanted to protect his daughter from an unstable situation. He sounded like the victim. "I made mistakes," he continued. "I'm not proud of how my marriage ended. But I'm trying to build a stable life now, and I want Martha to be part of that. I want her to have the childhood she deserves, away from all this chaos." When it was my turn to testify, I tried to explain my side of the story. I talked about the years I'd spent caring for Martha during her illness, about the medical decisions I'd made, about the love and stability I'd provided. But I could see in the judge's eyes that the damage was done. Darren had successfully positioned himself as the reasonable parent trying to protect his child from an unreasonable situation. And maybe, in some ways, he was right. That night, I sat in Martha's room and watched her sleep, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Had my need for justice put my daughter in jeopardy? Had I been so focused on making Darren pay that I'd forgotten what was really important? For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I considered the possibility that I might lose. And if I lost Martha, nothing else would matter. Not the money, not the company, not the justice I'd sought. Nothing. The call came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, 6 weeks into the custody battle that was slowly destroying both Martha and me. "Ms. Brooks." The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "This is Dr. Sarah Chandler from Children's Hospital. I'm calling about Martha." My blood turned to ice. "What's wrong? Is she okay?" "She's stable now, but she was brought in about an hour ago. She collapsed at her father's apartment during his overnight visitation. We're running tests, but we wanted you to know immediately." I was dressed and in my car within minutes, my mind racing through every terrible possibility. Martha had been in remission for months. Her last checkup had been perfect. What could have gone wrong? The hospital corridors felt endless as I rushed toward the pediatric wing. I found Dr. Chandler waiting for me outside Martha's room, her expression carefully neutral in the way doctors learn when they have difficult news to deliver. "How is she?" Physically, she's fine. The collapse was caused by severe anxiety and exhaustion. Her blood work is normal. There's no sign of any recurrence of her leukemia. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a different kind of fear. Anxiety. Martha's been under tremendous stress, Ms. Brooks. The custody battle, the media attention, the constant upheaval in her life. It's taking a serious toll on her mental health. I looked through the window at my daughter, small and pale in the hospital bed, and felt my world crumble around me. Can I see her? Of course. But Ms. Brooks, we need to talk about what's best for Martha going forward. This level of stress isn't sustainable for a child her age. I sat beside Martha's bed and held her hand while she slept. She looked so fragile, so much smaller than her 5 years. The monitors beeped softly around us, and I was transported back to the months of her cancer treatment, when every day had been a fight for her life. I'd thought we were past that. I'd thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. When Martha woke up, her first words broke my heart completely. "Mommy, I'm sorry." "Sorry for what, sweetheart?" "For getting sick again. For making everyone fight more." I climbed into the narrow hospital bed beside her, holding her close. "Baby, you have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing that's happening is your fault. But if I wasn't sick, Daddy wouldn't have left. And if I wasn't here, you and Daddy wouldn't be fighting. Martha, look at me." I tilted her chin up so she could see my eyes. "Daddy didn't leave because you were sick. And we're not fighting because of you. Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices, and sometimes they hurt the people they love. But none of that is because of anything you did. Then why does everything feel so scary?" I didn't have an answer for that. Because everything was scary. The custody battle was getting uglier by the day. The media attention was relentless, and now my daughter was in the hospital because the stress of our situation had literally made her collapse. Dr. Chandler returned an hour later with a social worker I didn't recognize. "Ms. Brooks, this is Janet Morrison from Child Protective Services. Given Martha's hospitalization and the ongoing custody dispute, we need to discuss some immediate interventions." My stomach dropped. "What kind of interventions?" "Martha needs stability," Janet said gently. "The current situation, the custody battle, the media attention, the constant upheaval, it's not sustainable. We need to find a way to reduce the stress in her life immediately." "What are you suggesting?" "Temporary placement with a neutral party while the custody issues are resolved. Someone who can provide a calm, stable environment away from all the conflict." "You want to take her away from both of us?" "We want to protect her. Martha's health, both physical and mental, has to be the priority here." I looked at my daughter, who was pretending to sleep but clearly listening to every word. The idea of her being placed with strangers, of losing her while Darren and I fought over who deserved her more, was unbearable. But the idea of her getting sicker because of our conflict was worse. How long would this placement last? Until the custody situation is resolved, and we can ensure that Martha's living situation will be stable and healthy. And if I withdrew from the custody battle? If I agreed to let her father have primary custody? Janet and Dr. Chandler exchanged glances. That would certainly reduce the immediate stress. But Ms. Brooks, you need to make that decision based on what's truly best for Martha, not just what's easiest in the moment. After they left, I sat alone with my daughter and faced the most impossible choice of my life. I could continue fighting for custody, knowing that the battle was destroying Martha's health and happiness. I could risk losing her to the system while lawyers argued about who was the better parent. Or I could give up. I could let Darren win, let him take Martha to his quiet life with Victoria, away from the media circus that surrounded me. I could sacrifice my own happiness to protect my daughter's health. "Mommy?" Martha's voice was small in the darkness of the hospital room. "Are you going to give me to Daddy?" "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" I heard the lady talking. She said maybe I should live somewhere else for a while. I took her hand, marveling at how small it was, how fragile. This little person was the center of my universe, the reason I got up every morning, the most important thing I would ever accomplish. Martha, if you could choose, where would you want to live? With you. But only if it doesn't make you sad anymore. What do you mean? You've been sad since Daddy left. And then you got famous and everyone started being mean to you. And now you're sad all the time, even when you try to smile. Out of the mouths of babes. My 5-year-old daughter had seen what I'd been trying to hide from everyone, including myself. I am sad sometimes. But not because of you. Never because of you. But if I lived with Daddy, would you be happy again? The question hung in the air between us, and I realized that Martha was trying to solve our problems the only way she knew how, by sacrificing herself. Baby, my happiness doesn't depend on where you live. It depends on knowing that you're safe and loved and healthy. If you're happy, I'm happy. But I want to live with you. I want that too. More than anything. Then why can't we just go back to how things were before? Before everyone knew about the money. If only it were that simple. If only I could take back the wedding speech, the media attention, the custody battle that was tearing our family apart. But I couldn't. The genie was out of the bottle, and there was no putting it back. The next morning, I made the hardest decision of my life. I called Patricia Williams and told her I was withdrawing from the custody battle. Liana, are you sure about this? We have a strong case. Martha clearly wants to live with you. Martha is in the hospital because of the stress we've put her through. I won't let this fight destroy her health. But if you give up now, Darren gets everything he wants. He gets Martha, and he gets to look like the reasonable parent who was just trying to protect his daughter. I don't care how it looks. I care about Martha. What about visitation? What about your rights as her mother? We'll work something out. But the fighting stops now. I hung up and called Darren directly. Liana? How's Martha? I heard about the hospital. She's fine. Physically. But this custody battle is making her sick, Darren. It has to stop. I agree. This has gotten out of hand. I'm withdrawing my petition. You can have primary custody. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Are you serious? I'm serious. But I have conditions. What conditions? I want generous visitation. I want to be involved in all major decisions about her health and education. And I want this to be about what's best for Martha, not about you winning some kind of victory over me. Of course. Liana, I never wanted to hurt Martha. I just want what's best for her. Then prove it. Give her the stable, quiet life you promised. Keep her away from the media. Let her be a normal kid. I will. I promise. And Darren? If you ever use her as a weapon against me again, if you ever put your own interests ahead of hers, I will destroy you in ways you can't imagine. I have the resources now to make your life very difficult. I understand. Good. I'll have my lawyer draw up the agreement. After I hung up, I sat in the hospital corridor and cried for everything I was losing. Not just custody of my daughter, but the dream of the family we could have been, the life we could have built together. But as I cried, I also felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. The fighting was over. The media circus would die down. Martha could go back to being a normal little girl instead of a pawn in her parents' war. And maybe, just maybe, we could all start healing. Dr. Chandler found me in the corridor an hour later. I heard about your decision. That couldn't have been easy. It was the only decision I could make. Martha's health is more important than my pride. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Children need stability more than they need justice. I hope so. I really hope so. Martha's asking for you. She's being discharged this afternoon. I walked back into my daughter's room, where she was sitting up in bed, looking more alert than she had in weeks. Mommy, are you okay? You look sad. I'm okay, sweetheart. I made a decision about where you're going to live. Her face fell. With Daddy. Yes. But that doesn't mean I love you any less or that I won't see you all the time. It just means we're going to try something different for a while. Because I got sick? Because I want you to be happy and healthy, and sometimes that means making hard choices. Martha was quiet for a long moment, processing this information in the way children do. Will you still be my mommy? Always. Forever and always. Nothing will ever change that. And will you still be rich? I laughed despite everything. Yes, baby. I'll still be rich. Good. Because when I grow up, I want to be rich too. So I can take care of you when you're old. I held my daughter close and made her a silent promise. This wasn't the end of our story. This was just a chapter, a difficult season we would get through together. And someday, when she was old enough to understand, I would tell her the whole truth about why I'd made this choice. I would explain that sometimes love means letting go, that sometimes protecting someone means sacrificing your own happiness. I would tell her that giving her up was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and also the most important. Because that's what mothers do. We make the impossible choices so our children don't have to. Even when it breaks our hearts completely. The custody agreement was finalized 2 weeks later, with minimal media attention. Darren got primary custody, I got generous visitation rights, and Martha got what she needed most: peace. The media moved on to other stories. The photographers stopped following us, and slowly, quietly, our lives began to return to something resembling normal. But normal looked very different now. I threw myself into running Brooks Global, channeling my energy into building something meaningful instead of fighting battles I couldn't win. The company flourished under my leadership, and I found purpose in work that mattered. Martha thrived in her new environment. The stress-related symptoms disappeared, her anxiety decreased, and she began to seem like herself again. She spent weekends with me, and we built a new kind of relationship, one based on quality time rather than daily routine. And slowly, very slowly, I began to heal from the wounds that Darren's betrayal had left behind. But I never forgot the lesson I'd learned in that hospital room. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go. Even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted. Even when it breaks your heart. Even when it means admitting that you can't always protect the people you love from the consequences of your own choices. That was the hardest truth I'd ever had to face. But it was also the beginning of my real strength. 2 years passed before I saw Darren again. 2 years of building Brooks Global into an even more powerful empire, of weekend visits with Martha that became the highlight of my existence, of slowly learning to live with the choice I'd made. Martha was thriving. At 7 years old, she was confident, healthy, and happy in ways that made my sacrifice feel worthwhile. She spent every other weekend with me, and we'd built a beautiful routine of museum visits, quiet dinners, and long conversations about everything and nothing. She was also starting to ask harder questions. "Mommy, why did you let me live with Daddy?" she asked one Saturday morning as we made pancakes in my new penthouse kitchen. I'd moved out of our old apartment 6 months after the custody agreement, unable to bear the memories. The penthouse was beautiful but sterile, a place that reflected my wealth but not my heart. "Because I wanted you to be happy and healthy," I said, the same answer I'd given dozens of times. "But I was happy with you. You were also stressed and scared. Remember how you ended up in the hospital? But that was because everyone was fighting. They're not fighting anymore." She was right, of course. The fighting had stopped, the media attention had died down, and Martha's life had stabilized completely. But the custody arrangement remained unchanged, a monument to a crisis that no longer existed. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that seem right at the time, even if they don't make sense later, I said carefully. "Do you miss me?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Every single day, sweetheart. Every single day. I miss you too. I wish I could live with both of you, but in different houses." "What do you mean?" "Like, live with you sometimes and Daddy sometimes, but not because anyone is fighting. Just because I love you both." Out of the mouths of babes. My 7-year-old daughter had just described a co-parenting arrangement that could actually work. if the adults involved were mature enough to handle it. That's a very smart idea, Martha. Could we do that? Maybe. Someday. But someday came sooner than I expected, and in a way I never could have anticipated. The call came on a Thursday evening in March. I was in my office, reviewing quarterly reports, when my assistant buzzed me. Ms. Brooks? There's a Victoria Chandler on line 1. She says it's urgent and personal. Victoria. I hadn't spoken to her since the wedding, though I'd kept tabs on her life through the business networks we now shared. She'd left her job after the acquisition of her father's company, and from what I'd heard, her marriage to Darren was struggling. Put her through. Liana. Victoria's voice was different than I remembered. Smaller, less confident. Thank you for taking my call. What can I do for you, Victoria? I need to see you. In person. It's about Darren and Martha. My blood ran cold. Is Martha okay? She's fine. But there are things you need to know. Things about Darren that I should have told you a long time ago. What kind of things? Not over the phone. Please. Can we meet? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her the next day at a small cafe downtown. I spent the night wondering what could be so urgent that Victoria Chandler would reach out to the woman whose life she'd helped destroy. I arrived at the cafe early and chose a corner table where we could talk privately. Victoria walked in exactly on time, and I was shocked by how different she looked. Gone was the polished, confident woman who'd stolen my husband. In her place was someone who looked tired, defeated, and much older than her years. Thank you for coming, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. You said this was about Martha. What's going on? Victoria took a deep breath, and I could see her gathering courage for whatever she was about to say. Darren's been lying to you. About everything. About why he left, about his feelings for me, about his plans for Martha. I'm listening. He never loved me, Liana. Not really. The whole thing was calculated from the beginning. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. What do you mean? He found out who you were before he left you. He knew about your inheritance, about Brooks Global, about everything. The words hit me like ice water. That's impossible. I never told him. He hired a private investigator. About 6 months before Martha got sick. He was suspicious about some things the way you never seemed worried about money, the quality of Martha's medical care, little things that didn't add up. My mind was racing, trying to remember any signs I might have missed. Why would he investigate me? Because he was already planning to leave you. He'd been having an affair with his previous supervisor for months. But when he found out who you really were, he realized he needed a different strategy. What kind of strategy? Victoria pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. He approached me specifically because of my father's business connections. He thought if he could marry me and get custody of Martha, he'd have access to your wealth through child support and Martha's inheritance. I read through the messages with growing horror. They were all there, Darren's calculations about my net worth, his plans to use Martha as leverage, his cold assessment of how much money he could extract from our relationship. He never loved either of us, Victoria continued. We were both just means to an end. Why are you telling me this now? Because I found out what he's really planning to do with Martha. My heart stopped. What do you mean? He's been meeting with lawyers about changing Martha's last name to his, about limiting your visitation rights, about positioning himself as her primary guardian so he can make decisions about her inheritance when she turns 18. He can't do that. We have a custody agreement. He's been documenting everything. Every time Martha comes home from your house talking about the expensive things you've bought her, every time she mentions your penthouse or your cars or your lifestyle. He's building a case that you're using your wealth to manipulate her, that she'd be better off with limited exposure to your excessive lifestyle. I felt sick. And you've been helping him? I didn't know. Not at first. I thought he genuinely loved me, that he was just trying to protect Martha from an unstable situation. But I started noticing things. The way he talked about you, about Martha, about money. It was all so calculated. What changed your mind? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. I overheard him on a phone call with his lawyer last week. He was talking about Martha like she was a business asset. He said, and I quote, "The kid is worth more to me than any lottery ticket. I just need to make sure the mother doesn't interfere with my long-term plans." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. My daughter, reduced to a financial instrument in her father's grand scheme. "There's more," Victoria said quietly. "He's been telling Martha things about you. Lies about why you gave up custody, about how you chose your career over her, about how you don't really want the responsibility of being a full-time mother." "What kind of lies?" "He told her that you only visit her on weekends because you're too busy with your company to spend more time with her. He told her that you gave up custody because being rich was more important to you than being a mother." I felt my world tilting on its axis. Martha's never said anything, because she loves you and doesn't want to hurt your feelings. But Darren's been poisoning her against you slowly, systematically. He's trying to make her believe that you abandoned her by choice, not because you were trying to protect her. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I couldn't speak for several minutes. I'd given up custody to protect Martha from our conflict, and Darren had used that sacrifice as a weapon against me. "Why are you telling me this now?" I finally managed. "Because I can't be part of it anymore. And because Martha deserves better than being used as a pawn in her father's game." "What do you want from me?" "I want to help you get her back. I have recordings of Darren's conversations with his lawyers. I have text messages where he admits to manipulating the situation. I have evidence that could change everything. I stared at this woman who'd helped destroy my marriage, who was now offering to help me reclaim my daughter." "Why would you help me?" "Because I've seen what Darren is really like. Because I've watched him use Martha as a tool to get what he wants. And because I know what it's like to be manipulated by him." "What's in it for you?" "Nothing. I'm leaving him. I'm filing for divorce next week. But before I do, I want to make sure Martha is protected from his schemes." I studied Victoria's face, looking for signs of deception, for hidden motives. But all I saw was genuine remorse and determination. "What kind of evidence do you have?" Victoria pulled out a tablet and showed me a folder full of documents. Recordings of his phone calls with lawyers. Text messages about his plans for Martha's inheritance. Financial records showing how he's been calculating potential child support payments based on your wealth. And this. She played an audio recording that made my blood run cold. Darren's voice, clear and unmistakable. "The beauty of this situation is that Liana thinks she's protecting Martha by staying away. She has no idea that every day she's not fighting for custody is another day I'm building my case for permanent control. By the time Martha's 18, I'll have complete authority over her inheritance, and Liana will be nothing more than a weekend visitor with no legal standing." I listened to the recording twice, feeling my shock transform into something much more dangerous, cold, calculated fury. "How long has he been planning this?" "Since before he left you. Maybe longer." "And you're willing to testify to all of this?" "Yes. I'll do whatever it takes to stop him." I looked at Victoria Chandler, the woman who'd helped destroy my family, who was now offering to help me rebuild it. The irony wasn't lost on me. "What do you want in return?" "Just forgiveness, I guess. I know I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can help fix some of the damage." I thought about Martha, about the lies she'd been told, about the way her father was using her as a commodity in his grand financial scheme. I thought about the 2 years I'd spent believing I was protecting her by staying away, while he was actually using my absence to manipulate her against me. "Victoria, if we do this, if we expose what Darren's been doing, it's going to get ugly. Very ugly. I know. The media will be all over it again. Your divorce will become public. Your reputation will be destroyed. My reputation is already destroyed. I married a man who was using me to get to his ex-wife's money. I helped him manipulate a custody situation that separated a mother from her daughter. I deserve whatever consequences come from that. I made my decision. Okay, let's do this. But we do it right. We document everything. We build an airtight case, and we make sure that when we move, Darren has no way to escape the consequences of what he's done. What do you need from me? Everything. Every recording, every text message, every piece of evidence you have. And I need you to keep gathering information until we're ready to act. When will that be? I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Martha's 8th birthday is next month. Darren's planning a big party, inviting all his business associates and social connections. He wants to show off his perfect family, his successful life. And that's when we're going to show everyone exactly what kind of man Darren Matthews really is. Victoria nodded, understanding immediately. Public exposure. The most public exposure possible. I want everyone who matters in his life to see the evidence of what he's done. I want his reputation destroyed the same way he tried to destroy mine. And Martha will finally learn the truth about why I gave up custody. She'll understand that I didn't abandon her. I was protecting her from a father who saw her as a business opportunity. We spent the next hour planning our strategy, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I was taking control of my life again. Darren had made one crucial mistake in his elaborate scheme. He'd underestimated the woman he'd betrayed. He was about to learn that I hadn't become one of the most powerful people in the world by accepting defeat. I'd become powerful by turning my enemies' weapons against them. And Darren Matthews was about to discover just how dangerous it was to use my daughter as a pawn in his game. The reckoning was coming. And this time, I wasn't going to hold back. Martha's 8th birthday party was everything Darren had promised it would be: lavish, impressive, and attended by everyone who mattered in his carefully constructed new life. The venue was the ballroom of Chicago's most exclusive country club. The guest list included his business associates, Victoria's former social circle, Martha's classmates and their parents, and even some local media personalities who'd covered our custody battle 2 years earlier. Darren had spared no expense, clearly wanting to showcase his success and stability. Ice sculptures, a live band, a cake that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Everything designed to prove that he was the kind of father who could provide Martha with the best of everything. He had no idea that the woman he'd betrayed was about to provide him with the worst day of his life. I arrived exactly on time, carrying a beautifully wrapped gift for Martha and a tablet containing 2 years' worth of evidence that would destroy everything Darren had built. Martha ran to me the moment she saw me, her face lighting up with pure joy. "Mommy, you came." "Of course I came, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss your birthday for anything." She looked beautiful in her party dress, healthy and happy, and completely unaware that her world was about to change again. But this time, the change would be for the better. "Did you bring me a present?" "I did. But first, I have something important to tell everyone. Is that okay? Like a speech. Something like that." Darren approached us, his smile tight and forced. "Liana, thank you for coming. Martha's been looking forward to seeing you." "I'm sure she has." "Darren, I need to speak with you privately before the party continues." "Can it wait? We're about to cut the cake." "No, it can't wait." Something in my tone made him look at me more carefully. I could see the moment he realized this wasn't a social visit. "Martha, sweetheart, why don't you go play with your friends for a few minutes? Mommy and Daddy need to talk." After Martha skipped away, I turned to face the man who'd spent 2 years systematically destroying my relationship with my daughter. "I know everything, Darren. I don't know what you're talking about. I know about the private investigator. I know about your plans for Martha's inheritance. I know about the lies you've been telling her about me. I know all of it." The color drained from his face. "Liana, whatever you think you know. I have recordings, text messages, financial documents, everything." "That's impossible." Victoria gave them to me. The mention of his wife's name hit him like a physical blow. Victoria wouldn't. Victoria's filing for divorce next week. She's also prepared to testify about everything you've done. Every lie, every manipulation, every scheme you've hatched to use our daughter as a weapon against me. Darren looked around the party, at all the people he'd invited to witness his success, and I could see him calculating his options. What do you want? I want my daughter back. Full custody, with generous visitation for you, assuming you can prove you're capable of putting her needs ahead of your own financial interests. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my tablet and played one of the recordings Victoria had given me. Darren's voice filled the space between us, cold and calculating as he discussed his plans for Martha's inheritance. I can prove everything. The question is whether you want me to do it here, in front of all these people, or whether you want to handle this privately. You wouldn't. Not at Martha's birthday party. You used my daughter as a pawn in your financial schemes for 2 years. You poisoned her against me with lies. You made me believe I was protecting her by staying away while you were actually using my absence to manipulate her. So yes, Darren, I absolutely would. He stared at me, and I could see him weighing his options. Fight me publicly and risk complete humiliation, or surrender quietly and hope to salvage something from the wreckage. What are your terms? Full custody returns to me immediately. You get supervised visitation until you can prove you're capable of putting Martha's needs first. And you tell her the truth about why I gave up custody 2 years ago. And if I refuse? Then I play these recordings for everyone here, including the reporters you invited to cover your perfect family celebration. I show them the text messages where you calculated how much money you could extract from Martha's inheritance. I expose you for exactly what you are. Darren was quiet for a long moment, looking around at the party he'd thrown to celebrate his success. Fine. But I want this handled through lawyers. Properly. Already arranged. My legal team is prepared to file the paperwork first thing Monday morning. And the recordings? Stay private, as long as you honor our agreement and stop lying to Martha about me. He nodded reluctantly, and I felt a weight I'd been carrying for 2 years finally lift from my shoulders. There's one more thing, Darren. What? I want you to understand something. I gave up custody 2 years ago because I thought it was best for Martha. I thought the fighting was hurting her, and I was willing to sacrifice my own happiness to protect her health. That was real love, even if it was misguided. Liana. But what you did, using her as a commodity, lying to her about me, planning to control her inheritance, that wasn't love. That was greed. And if you ever try to use my daughter as a weapon against me again, I will destroy you so completely that you'll wish you'd never heard the name Brooks. The threat hung in the air between us, and I could see in his eyes that he understood I meant every word. Now, let's go tell Martha that Mommy and Daddy have worked out a new arrangement that means she'll get to spend more time with both of us. The conversation with Martha was easier than I'd expected. Children are remarkably adaptable, and the prospect of spending more time with me while still seeing her father regularly seemed to make perfect sense to her. So I'll live with you again, she asked, her eyes bright with excitement. If that's what you want, sweetheart. Yes. I missed living with you, Mommy. I missed our pancake breakfasts and our movie nights. I miss them too, baby. More than you know. And Daddy will still see me? Of course. Daddy loves you very much, and that will never change. I looked at Darren as I said it, and saw something in his face that might have been genuine remorse. Maybe losing everything would teach him what actually mattered. The rest of the party passed in a blur of cake and presents and children's laughter. But underneath the celebration, I could feel the shift in dynamics, the way people were beginning to sense that something significant had changed. Victoria appeared at my side as the party was winding down. How did it go? He agreed to everything. Martha comes home with me tonight. Good. She belongs with you. Victoria, I want you to know what you did, giving me that evidence. It took courage. I know it wasn't easy. It was the right thing to do. I should have done it sooner. What will you do now? Start over, I guess. Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else's idea of perfect. I looked at this woman who'd helped destroy my marriage, but had ultimately helped me reclaim my daughter, and felt something I hadn't expected: forgiveness. If you ever need anything, a job, a reference, whatever, call me. Thank you. That means more than you know. As we prepared to leave the party, Martha clutching her presents and chattering excitedly about moving back in with me, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't experienced in years. The drive back to my penthouse was filled with Martha's questions about our new life together. Where would she sleep? Could she decorate her room however she wanted? Would we still have pancake breakfasts? Yes to all of it, I told her. We're going to build something beautiful together, sweetheart. Just you and me. And maybe someday we can help other kids whose parents are fighting? The suggestion stopped me cold. What do you mean? Well, you're really good at helping people, and you have lots of money. Maybe we could help other kids who are sad because their mommies and daddies are fighting. Out of the mouths of babes. My 8-year-old daughter had just given me the perfect way to channel everything I'd learned from our ordeal. That's a wonderful idea, Martha. Maybe we could start a foundation to help families going through difficult times. The Martha Foundation? I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. The Martha Foundation sounds perfect. That night, after Martha was asleep in her new room, which she'd immediately declared was the most beautiful room in the whole world, I sat in my living room and reflected on everything that had brought us to this moment. 2 years ago, I'd thought my life was over. My husband had betrayed me, my marriage had ended, and I'd lost custody of my daughter. I'd felt like a failure as a wife, as a mother, as a woman. But sitting there in the quiet of my home, with my daughter safely asleep down the hall, I realized that everything I'd lost had led me to something better. I'd discovered my own strength. I'd learned that I could survive betrayal, heartbreak, and loss. I'd found out that I was capable of making impossible choices and living with the consequences. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to you are actually preparing you for the best things that are coming. My phone buzzed with a text message from James Morrison. Saw the news about the custody change. Congratulations. Your grandmother would be proud. She would be, I realized. Not because I'd won a battle or gotten revenge on someone who'd wronged me, but because I'd learned to use my power responsibly, to protect the people I loved, and to turn my pain into purpose. The Martha Foundation would become my new mission. We'd help families navigate custody disputes, provide resources for single parents, and ensure that children's needs always came first in family conflicts. We'd turn our story of betrayal and redemption into hope for other families facing similar struggles. But that was tomorrow's work. Tonight was for celebrating the fact that my daughter was home, that our family was whole again, and that we'd survived everything life had thrown at us. I checked on Martha one more time before going to bed. She was sleeping peacefully, surrounded by her birthday presents and the stuffed animals she'd missed during our time apart. Sweet dreams, baby, I whispered. Tomorrow we start our new adventure. As I turned to leave, I heard her sleepy voice, Mommy. Yes, sweetheart. I love you. Thank you for fighting for me. I love you too, Martha. And I'll always fight for you. Always. I closed her door and walked to my own room, feeling more at peace than I had in years. The battle was over, the war was won, and my daughter was home where she belonged. But more than that, I discovered something invaluable. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, more resilient than I'd ever believed, and more capable of love than I'd ever known. Darren had tried to break me, but instead, he'd helped me become the woman I was always meant to be. And for that, in a strange way, I was almost grateful. The next morning, Martha and I made pancakes together in our kitchen, just like we used to do. She chattered about her plans for redecorating her room, about the friends she wanted to invite over, about all the adventures we'd have together. Mommy, are you happy now? She asked as we sat down to eat. I'm very happy, sweetheart. Are you? The happiest I've ever been. Good. That's all that matters. As we ate our pancakes and planned our day, I thought about the future stretching out ahead of us. There would be challenges, of course. Darren would need time to adjust to his new role in Martha's life. The media might pick up the story again. Building the foundation would require time and energy and careful planning. But for the first time in years, I was looking forward to those challenges instead of dreading them. I was Liana Brooks, CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises, mother to the most amazing little girl in the world, and a woman who learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're really made of. And what I was made of, it turned out, was much stronger than anyone, including myself, had ever imagined. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But this chapter, the chapter of betrayal and heartbreak and fighting for my daughter, was finally closed. And the next chapter was going to be beautiful. Hey everyone! Thank you so much for staying with me through this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about resilience, justice, and the power of never giving up on the people you love. Drop a comment below and let me know, have you ever had to make an impossible choice to protect someone you loved? How did it turn out? And remember, no matter what challenges you're facing right now, you're stronger than you know. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually preparing us for the best moments that are coming. Until next time, keep fighting for what matters, keep believing in justice, and never, ever underestimate the quiet ones. They might just surprise you.